translation of Sahih Bukhari, Book 82, Punishment of Disbelievers at War with Allah and His Apostle. Volume 8, Book 82, number 794, narrated Anas. Some people from the tribe of Uqal came to the Prophet and embraced Islam. The climate of Medina did not suit them, so the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of milch camels of charity and to drink their milk and urine as a medicine. They did so, and after they had recovered from their ailment became healthy, they turned renegades, reverted from Islam and killed the shepherd of the camels and took the camels away. The Prophet sent some people in their pursuit, and so they were caught and brought, and the Prophets ordered that their hands and legs should be cut off and that their eyes should be branded with heated pieces of iron, and that their cut hands and legs should not be cauterized, till they die. Number 795, narrated Anas. The Prophet cut off the hands and feet of the men belonging to the tribe of Urayna and did not cauterize their bleeding limbs till they died. Number 796, narrated Anas. A group of people from Uqal tribe came to the Prophet and they were living with the people of As-Sufa, but they became ill as the climate of Medina did not suit them, so they said, "O Allah's Apostle, provide us with milk." The Prophet said, "I see no other way for you than to use the camels of Allah's Apostle." So they went and drank the milk and urine of the camels, as medicine, and became healthy and fat. Then they killed the shepherd and took the camels away. When a help-seeker came to Allah's Apostle, he sent some men in their pursuit, and they were captured and brought before midday. The Prophet ordered for some iron pieces to be made red-hot, and their eyes were branded with them and their hands and feet were cut off and were not cauterized. Then they were put at a place called Al-Hara, and when they asked for water to drink they were not given till they died. Abu Kilaba said, "Those people committed theft and murder and fought against Allah and His Apostle." Number 797, narrated Anas bin Malik. A group of people from Uqal or Urayna tribe, but I think he said that they were from Uqal, came to Medina and they became ill, so the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of milch camels and told them to go out and drink the camel's urine and milk as a medicine, so they went and drank it, and when they became healthy, they killed the shepherd and drove away the camels. This news reached the Prophet early in the morning, so he sent some men in their pursuit and they were captured and brought to the Prophet before midday. He ordered to cut off their hands and legs and their eyes to be branded with heated iron pieces, and they were thrown at Al-Hara, and when they asked for water to drink, they were not given water. Abu Kilaba said, "Those were the people who committed theft and murder and reverted to disbelief after being believers Muslims, and fought against Allah and His Apostle." Number 798, narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, 7 people will be shaded by Allah by His shade on the day of resurrection, when there will be no shade except His shade. They will be, a just ruler, a young man who has been brought up in the worship of Allah, a man who remembers Allah in seclusion and his eyes are then flooded with tears, a man whose heart is attached to mosques, offers his compulsory congregational prayers in the mosque, 2 men who love each other for Allah's sake, a man who is called by a charming lady of noble birth to commit illegal sexual intercourse with her, and he says, "I am afraid of Allah." And finally, a man who gives in charity so secretly that his left hand does not know what his right hand has given. Number 799, narrated Sahih bin Sa'd. The Prophet said, "Whoever guarantees me the chastity of what is between his legs, that is his private parts, and what is between his jaws, that is, his tongue, I guarantee him paradise." Number 800, narrated Anas. I will narrate to you a narration which nobody will narrate to you after me. I heard that from the Prophet. I heard the Prophet saying, "The hour shall not be established," or said, "From among the portents of the hour is that the religious knowledge will be taken away by the death of religious scholars, and general ignorance of religion will appear. And the drinking of alcoholic drinks will be very common, and open illegal sexual intercourse will prevail, and men will decrease in number while women will increase, so much so that, for 50 women there will only be 1 man to look after them." Number 800, narrated Ikrimah from Ibn Abbas. Allah's Apostle said, "When a slave of Allah commits illegal sexual intercourse, he is not a believer at the time of committing it, and if he steals, he is not a believer at the time of stealing. And if he drinks an alcoholic drink, when he is not a believer at the time of drinking it." and he is not a believer when he commits a murder, Ikrimah said. I asked Ibn Abbas, how is faith taken away from him? He said, like this, by clasping his hands and then separating them, and added, but if he repents, faith returns to him like this, by clasping his hands again. Number 801, narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, the one who commits an illegal sexual intercourse is not a believer at the time of committing illegal sexual intercourse, and a thief is not a believer at the time of committing theft, and a drinker of alcoholic drink is not a believer at the time of drinking. Yet, the gate of repentance is open thereafter. Number 802, narrated Abdullah bin Mas'ud, I said, O Allah's Apostle, which is the biggest sin? He said, to set up rivals to Allah by worshipping others though He alone has created you. I asked, what is next? He said, to kill your child lest it should share your food. I asked, what is next? He said, to commit illegal sexual intercourse with the wife of your neighbor. Number 803, narrated Ash-Shabi, from Ali when the latter stoned a lady to death on a Friday. Ali said, I have stoned her according to the tradition of Allah's Apostle. Number 804, narrated Ash-Shaybani, I asked Abdullah bin Abi Awfa, did Allah's Apostle carry out the rajm penalty, that is stoning to death? He said, yes. I said, before the revelation of Surat An-Nur or after it? He replied, I don't know. Number 805, narrated Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, a man from the tribe of Bani Aslam came to Allah's Apostle and informed him that he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and bore witness 4 times against himself. Allah's Apostle ordered him to be stoned to death as he was a married person. Number 806, narrated Abu Hurairah, a man came to Allah's Apostle while he was in the mosque, and he called him, saying, O Allah's Apostle, I have committed illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet turned his face to the other side, but that man repeated his statement 4 times, and after he bore witness against himself 4 times, the Prophet called him, saying, Are you mad? The man said, No. The Prophet said, Are you married? The man said, Yes. Then the Prophet said, Take him away and stone him to death. Jabir bin Abdullah said, I was among the ones who participated in stoning him, and we stoned him at the Musalla. When the stones troubled him, he fled, but we overtook him at Al-Hara and stoned him to death. Number 807, narrated Aisha, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas and Abba bin Zam'a quarreled with each other regarding a child. The Prophet said, The boy is for you, O Abba bin Zam'a, for the boy is for the owner of the bed. O Sauda, screen yourself from the boy. The sub-narrator, Al-Layth, added that the Prophet also said, and the stone is for the person who commits an illegal sexual intercourse. Number 808, narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, the boy is for the owner of the bed and the stone is for the person who commits illegal sexual intercourse. Number 809, narrated Ibn Umar, a Jew and a Jewess were brought to Allah's Apostle on a charge of committing an illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet asked them, What is the legal punishment for the sin in your book Torah? They replied, Our priests have innovated the punishment of blackening the faces with charcoal and tajbiyah. Abdullah bin Salam said, O Allah's Apostle, tell them to bring the Torah. The Torah was brought, and then one of the Jews put his hand over the divine verse of the Rajam stoning to death and started reading what preceded and what followed it. On that, Ibn Salam said to the Jew, Lift up your hand. Behold, the divine verse of the Rajam was under his hand. So Allah's Apostle ordered that the 2 sinners be stoned to death, and so they were stoned. Ibn Umar added, So both of them were stoned at the ballot, and I saw the Jew sheltering the Jewess. Number 810, narrated Jabir, a man from the tribe of Aslam came to the Prophet and confessed that he had committed an illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet turned his face away from him till the man bore witness against himself 4 times. The Prophet said to him, Are you mad? He said no. He said, Are you married? He said, Yes. Then the Prophet ordered that he be stoned to death, and he was stoned to death at the Musalla. When the stones troubled him, he fled, but he was caught and was stoned till he died. The Prophet spoke well of him and offered his funeral prayer. Number 811d, narrated Abu Hurairah, a person had sexual relation with his wife in the month of Ramadan while he was fasting, and he came to Allah's Apostle seeking his verdict concerning that action. The Prophet said to him, "Can you afford to manumit a slave?" The man said, "No." The Prophet said, "Can you fast for 2 successive months?" He said, "No." The Prophet said, "Then feed 60 poor persons." Number 811e, narrated Aisha, a man came to the Prophet in the mosque and said, "I am burned, ruined." The Prophet asked him, "With what have you done?" He said, "I have had sexual relation with my wife in the month of Ramadan while fasting." The Prophet said to him, "Give in charity." He said, "I have nothing." The man sat down, and in the meantime there came a person driving a donkey carrying food to the Prophet. The sub-narrator, Abdurrahman, added, "I do not know what kind of food it was." On that the Prophet said, "Where is the burnt person?" The man said, "Here I am." The Prophet said to him, "Take this food and give it in charity to someone." The man said, "To a poorer person than I? My family has nothing to eat." Then the Prophet said to him, "Then eat it yourselves." Number 812, narrated Anas bin Malik, "While I was with the Prophet a man came and said, 'O Allah's Apostle, I have committed a legally punishable sin. Please inflict the legal punishment on me.' The Prophet did not ask him what he had done. Then the time for the prayer became due and the man offered prayer along with the Prophet, and when the Prophet had finished his prayer, the man again got up and said, 'O Allah's Apostle, I have committed a legally punishable sin. Please inflict the punishment on me according to Allah's laws.' The Prophet said, 'Haven't you prayed with us?' He said, 'Yes.' The Prophet said, 'Allah has forgiven your sin.' Or said, 'Your legally punishable sin.' Number 813, narrated Ibn Abbas, when Ma'az bin Malik came to the Prophet in order to confess, the Prophet said to him, 'Probably you have only kissed the lady, or winked, or looked at her.' He said, 'No, O Allah's Apostle.' The Prophet said, using no euphemism, 'Did you have sexual intercourse with her?' The narrator added, "At that is after his confession the Prophet ordered that he be stoned to death." Number 814, narrated Abu Hurairah, a man from among the people, came to Allah's Apostle while Allah's Apostle was sitting in the mosque, and addressed him, saying, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed an illegal sexual intercourse." The Prophet turned his face away from him. The man came to that side to which the Prophet had turned his face, and said, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed an illegal intercourse." The Prophet turned his face to the other side, and the man came to that side, and when he confessed 4 times, the Prophet called him and said, "Are you mad?" He said, "No, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said, "Are you married?" He said, "Yes, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said to the people, "Take him away and stone him to death." Ibn Shihab added, "I was told by one who heard Jabir, that Jabir said, I was among those who stoned the man, and we stoned him at the Musalla'id praying place, and when the stones troubled him, he jumped quickly and ran away, but we overtook him at Al-Hara and stoned him to death there." Number 815, narrated Abu Hurairah and Zayd bin Khalid, "While we were with the Prophet, a man stood up and said to the Prophet, 'I beseech you by Allah, that you should judge us according to Allah's laws.' Then the man's opponent, who was wiser than him, got up saying to Allah's Apostle, 'Judge us according to Allah's law and kindly allow me to speak.' The Prophet said, 'Speak.' He said, 'My son was a laborer working for this man and he committed an illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and I give 100 sheep and a slave as a ransom for my son's sin.' Then I asked a learned man about this case and he informed me that my son should receive 100 lashes and be exiled for 1 year, and the man's wife should be stoned to death. The Prophet said, 'By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to the laws of Allah. Your 100 sheep and a slave are to be returned to you, and your son has to receive 100 lashes and be exiled for 1 year. O Anna is. Go to the wife of this man, and if she confesses, then stone her to death.'" Anais went to her and she confessed. He then stoned her to death. Number 816, narrated Ibn Abbas, Umar said, I am afraid that after a long time has passed, people may say, we do not find the verses of the rajm, that is, stoning to death, in the Holy Book, and consequently they may go astray by leaving an obligation that Allah has revealed. Lo! I confirm that the penalty of rajm be inflicted on him who commits illegal sexual intercourse, if he is already married and the crime is proved by witnesses or pregnancy or confession. Sufyan added, I have memorized this narration in this way. Umar added, surely Allah's Apostle carried out the penalty of rajm, and so did we after him. Number 818, narrated Zayd bin Khalid al-Juhani, I heard the Prophet ordering that an unmarried person guilty of illegal sexual intercourse be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. Umar bin al-Khattab also exiled such a person, and this tradition is still valid. Number 819, narrated Abu Hurairah, Allah's Apostle judged that the unmarried person who was guilty of illegal sexual intercourse be exiled for 1 year and receive the legal punishment, that is, be flogged with 100 stripes. Number 820, narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet cursed the effeminate men and those women who assume the similitude manners of men. He also said, turn them out of your houses. He turned such and such person out, and Umar also turned out such and such person. Number 821, narrated Abu Hurairah and Zayd bin Khalid, a Bedouin came to the Prophet while the Prophet was sitting, and said, O Allah's Apostle! Give your verdict according to Allah's laws in our case. Then his opponent got up and said, he has told the truth, O Allah's Apostle. Decide his case according to Allah's laws. My son was a laborer working for this person, and he committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and the people told me that my son should be stoned to death, but I offered 100 sheep and a slave girl as a ransom for him. Then I asked the religious learned people, and they told me that my son should be flogged with 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. The Prophet said, by him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to Allah's laws. The sheep and the slave girl will be returned to you, and your son will be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. And you, O Anais, go to the wife of this man, and if she confesses, stone her to death. So Anais went in the morning and stoned her to death after she had confessed. Number 822, narrated Abu Hurairah and said bin Khalid, the verdict of Allah's Apostle was sought about an unmarried slave girl guilty of illegal intercourse. He replied, if she commits illegal sexual intercourse, then flog her 50 stripes, and if she commits illegal sexual intercourse after that for the second time, then flog her 50 stripes, and if she commits illegal sexual intercourse for the third time, then flog her 50 stripes and sell her for even a hair rope. Ibn Shihab said, I am not sure whether the Prophet ordered that she be sold after the third or fourth time of committing illegal intercourse. Number 823, narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, if a lady slave commits illegal sexual intercourse and she is proved guilty of illegal sexual intercourse, then she should be flogged 50 stripes, but she should not be admonished. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse again, then she should be flogged again but should not be admonished. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse for the third time, then she should be sold even for a hair rope. Number 824, narrated Ash-Shaybani, I asked Abdullah bin Abi Awfa about the rajm, that is stoning somebody to death for committing illegal sexual intercourse. He replied, the Prophet carried out the penalty of rajm. I asked, was that before or after the revelation of Surat An-Nur? He replied, I do not know. Number 825, narrated Abdullah bin Umar, the Jews came to Allah's Apostle and mentioned to him that a man and a lady among them had committed illegal sexual intercourse. Allah's Apostle said to them, what do you find in the Torah regarding the rajm? They replied, we only disgrace and flog them with stripes. Abdullah bin Salam said to them, you have told a lie, the penalty of rajm is in the Torah. They brought the Torah and opened it. One of them put his hand over the verse of the rajm and read what was before and after it. Abdullah bin Salam said to him, lift up your hand. Where he lifted it there appeared the verse of the rajm. So they said, O Muhammad. he has said the truth. The verse of the Rajam is in it Torah. Then Allah's apostle ordered that the two persons guilty of illegal sexual intercourse be stoned to death, and so they were stoned, and I saw the man bending over the woman so as to protect her from the stones. Number 826, narrated Abu Hurairah and Zayd bin Khalid, two men had a dispute in the presence of Allah's apostle. One of them said, "Judge us according to Allah's laws." The other, who is more wise, says, "Yes, Allah's apostle, judge us according to Allah's laws and allow me to speak first." The Prophet said to him, "Speak." He said, "My son was a laborer for this man, and he committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and the people told me that my son should be stoned to death, but I have given 100 sheep and a slave girl as a ransom expiation for my son's sin." Then I asked the religious learned people about it, and they told me that my son should be flogged 100 stripes and should be exiled for 1 year, and only the wife of this man should be stoned to death. Allah's apostle said, "By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to Allah's laws. O man, as for your sheep and slave girl, they are to be returned to you." Then the Prophet had the man's son flogged 100 stripes and exiled for 1 year, and ordered Anas al-Islami to go to the wife of the other man, and if she confessed, stone her to death. She confessed and was stoned to death. Number 827, narrated Aisha, Abu Bakr came to me while Allah's apostle was sleeping with his head on my thigh. Abu Bakr said to me, "You have detained Allah's apostle and the people, and there is no water in this place." So he admonished me and struck my flanks with his hand, and nothing could stop me from moving except the reclining of Allah's apostle on my thigh, and then Allah revealed the divine verse of Tayammum. Number 828, narrated Aisha, Abu Bakr came towards me and struck me violently with his fist and said, "You have detained the people because of your necklace." But I remained motionless as if I was dead lest I should awake Allah's apostle, although that hit was very painful. Number 829, narrated Al-Mughira, Sa'd bin Ubadah said, "If I found a man with my wife, I would kill him with the sharp side of my sword." When the Prophet heard that, he said, "Do you wonder at Sa'd's sense of ghira, that is self-respect? Verily, I have more sense of ghira than Sa'd, and Allah has more sense of ghira than I." Number 830, narrated Abu Hurairah, a Bedouin came to Allah's apostle and said, "My wife has delivered a black child." The Prophet said to him, "Have you camels?" He replied, "Yes." The Prophet said, "What color are they?" He replied, "They are red." The Prophet further asked, "Are any of them gray in color?" He replied, "Yes." The Prophet asked him, "Whence did that grayness come?" He said, "I think it descended from the camel's ancestors." Then the Prophet said to him, "Therefore, this child of yours has most probably inherited the color from his ancestors." Number 831, narrated Abu Burda, the Prophet used to say, "Nobody should be flogged more than 10 stripes except if he is guilty of a crime, the legal punishment of which is assigned by Allah." Number 832, narrated Abdurrahman bin Jabir, on the authority of others, that the Prophet said, "No punishment exceeds the flogging of the 10 stripes, except if one is guilty of a crime necessitating a legal punishment prescribed by Allah." Number 833, narrated Abu Burda al-Ansari, I heard the Prophet saying, "Do not flog anyone more than 10 stripes except if he is involved in a crime necessitating Allah's legal punishment." Number 834, narrated Abu Hurairah, Allah's apostle forbade al-wizl, fasting continuously for more than 1 day without taking any meals. A man from the Muslims said, "But you do al-wizl, O Allah's apostle." Allah's apostle, I said, "Who among you is similar to me? I sleep and my Lord makes me eat and drink." When the people refused to give up al-wizl, the Prophet fasted along with them for 1 day, and did not break his fast but continued his fast for another day, and when they saw the crescent, the Prophet said, "If the crescent had not appeared, I would have made you continue your fast for a 3rd day," as if he wanted to punish them for they had refused to give up al-wizl. Number 835, narrated Abdullah bin Umar, Those people who used to buy foodstuff at random without weighing or measuring it were beaten in the lifetime of Allah's Apostle if they sold it at the very place where they had bought it, till they carried it to their dwelling places. Number 836, narrated Aisha, Allah's Apostle never took revenge for his own self in any matter presented to him till Allah's limits were exceeded, in which case he would take revenge for Allah's sake. Number 837, narrated Sahih bin Sa'd, I witnessed the case of Lee and the case of a man who charged his wife for committing illegal sexual intercourse when I was 15 years old. The Prophet ordered that they be divorced, and the husband said, if I kept her, I would be a liar. I remember that Zubair also said, it was said that if that woman brought forth the child with such and such description, her husband would prove truthful, but if she brought it with such and such description looking like a wara, that is a red insect, he would prove untruthful. I heard Zubair also saying, finally she gave birth to a child of description which her husband disliked. Number 838, narrated Al-Qasim bin Muhammad, Ibn Abbas mentioned the couple who had taken the oath of li'an. Abdullah bin Shaddad said to him, was this woman about whom Allah's Apostle said, if I were ever to stone to death any woman without witnesses, I would have stoned that woman to death? Ibn Abbas replied, no, that lady exposed herself by her suspicious behavior. Number 839, narrated Ibn Abbas, li'an was mentioned in the presence of the Prophet. Asim bin Adi said a statement about it, and when he left, a man from his tribe came to him complaining that he had seen a man with his wife. Asim said, I have been put to trial only because of my statement. So he took the man to the Prophet and the man told him about the incident. The man's husband was of yellow complexion, thin, and of lank hair, while the man whom he had accused of having been with his wife, was reddish-brown with fat thick legs and fat body. The Prophet said, O Allah! Reveal the truth. Later on the lady delivered a child resembling the man whom the husband had accused of having been with her. So the Prophet made them take the oath of li'an. A man said to Ibn Abbas in the gathering, was that the same lady about whom the Prophet said, if I were to stone any lady for committing illegal sexual intercourse to death without witnesses, I would have stoned that lady to death? Ibn Abbas said, no, that was another lady who used to behave in such a suspicious way among the Muslims that one might accuse her of committing illegal sexual intercourse. Number 840, narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, avoid the 7 great destructive sins. They the people asked, O Allah's Apostle, what are they? He said, to join partners in worship with Allah, to practice sorcery, to kill the life which Allah has forbidden except for a just cause according to Islamic law, to eat up usury riba, to eat up the property of an orphan, to give one's back to the enemy, and freeing from the battlefield at the time of fighting, and to accuse chaste women who never even think of anything touching chastity and are good believers. Number 841, narrated Abu Hurairah, I heard Abu al-Qasim the Prophet saying, if somebody slanders a slave and the slave is free from what he says, he will be flogged on the day of resurrection unless the slave is really as he has described him.